Hello and welcome to another episode of Life Changes You. Today I've got someone all the way from Canada called Derek, who's from Young Alcoholic, an Instagram page, and he's got a website. So I'd like to welcome Derek. How are you, Derek?
Well, I'm doing just great today, thanks, and I appreciate you having me on.
That's great. It's good to talk to you. I mean, I contacted you because I thought your story was really important, and I think it will resonate with younger people who listen, or if their parents listen, you know, they can always say, hey, have a listen to this podcast because this guy has been through something that you're going through and, you know, it might change the way you see life. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm 40 years old. I live here in Winnipeg, Canada. I'm a civil engineer technologist, and I've been sober now for 9.5 years.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. And I do a lot of travel. I like playing guitar, like a practicing musician, and really enjoying life these days.
So you were a bit of a drinker when you were younger. Do you want to explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I kind of got maybe a bit later started. I didn't really start drinking until I was 18. And I, went out the first couple of times and it was pretty casual. And then I had my high school graduation, and looking back, just right away, the warning signs of what was to come was there because, started off like any other night where a couple drinks and that. And by the end of the night, I was just, drunk as I could get and sick and feeling like garbage. And at the time you thought nothing of it, but looking back, I was just typical me who once you started, you couldn't stop.
And so were you with a group of friends that would drink together, or were you starting to drink on your own?
Definitely at first it was pretty much social only. We would, go to bars and clubs. I go with some old school buddies and that. And it was nothing out of the ordinary. It felt like you were just doing kind of what you do at that age, go out and party and drink and that. But as years went on, it definitely started turning into isolated drinking, drinking on my own. And I always remember, like, as time went on, friends were completing school and, moving out, getting houses, moving into careers. And I was still drinking, and I would sort of shift the crowd I was hanging out with to accommodate my drinking.
Right. Yeah.
And it just started feeling like people were progressing in life and I was really standing still.
What was the point that you decided that drink wasn't working for you?
I was maybe around like 25-ish, somewhere in that area. And, back then internet wasn't quite what it was now. I mean, we're talking 15 years ago, but I remember finding one of those pamphlets, and it was like 10 signs you're an alcoholic. And, do you drink in the morning? Do you drink on the weekend? Do you drink to socialize, to escape?
So how many of those 10 did you tick off?
Well, I could have ticked off all of them probably, but, in your mind, you reason to support the addiction.
Yeah.
And I always think it's the addiction's kind of doing its thing and justifying your drinking. So, but that's when my curiosity started, is around then. And then I remember at the time I had a breakup with a girlfriend, and she wrote me a letter and then kind of went over a few things. And then I remember it clear as day. She said, one thing that concerns me is your drinking. And it was one of the first times somebody from the outside really shone a light on it and brought it to my attention like that. And that kind of reinforced some of the thoughts that I was having, about, boy, am I an alcoholic? Do I have an issue? Why is it that I'm always the one getting drunk every time?
Yeah. So did you try and reason with that letter?
Yeah, a little bit, thinking, oh, she's just being fussy or picky. I'm doing what people my age do.
Yeah.
Denial in that kind of stage. Denial/curiosity. But you were almost afraid to be curious.
Yeah.
Like you because it felt like, why me? Why me? Why am I going through this? I'm the only one. No one will understand.
Yeah.
What's wrong with, like, all those thoughts?
Yeah. I was just going to say, and I guess when you're thinking like that, it's not actually your normal brain thinking, it's your drunk brain. And so it's really hard to get clarity when your brain is still probably drunk and you're trying to think through, well, is this the right thing for me? Should I, I guess it depends on how much you were drinking at the time, depends on how clearly you could see an outside or an out from the drinking.
Oh, for sure. And I always think, like, the further you get into that lifestyle, your level of what's normal deteriorates. So your definition of this is normal is, a lot more skewed than probably what your average person would think.
Yeah. And also, I guess the fear of how will I feel when I don't have a drink, I mean, because we always go, alcoholics, drug addicts should stop doing drugs, stop drinking. But for that person, having to think about what it will feel like to not have that substance in you, you've got to really clean yourself out. And then what's life going to be like on that side?
Yeah. And that was so hard to imagine at the time.
Yeah.
Like just imagining a life without alcohol. I remember a little later on, I went to an addictions counselor speaking of this woman, and I said, how will I ever travel again if I don't drink? And she said to me, oh, you'll be able to. And I thought, lady, there is no way. Like, you don't know. And I'd like to track her down and give her an apology and say, boy, you were right. Because I've been able to since. But at the time, you just can't see. It just seems hopeless sometimes. And you just can't envision a life without it because it's been a part of you for so long.
And I guess that's one of the hardest things. It becomes part of your life, doesn't it? And so looking at your life without that and say you've been drinking for 10, 15 years, it's like it's unfathomable. I can't say that word. It's unthinkable.
Yes, absolutely. It's hard to quantify in your brain, like, what does life look like without alcohol? And then all the small things, like, what do I do at my friend's wedding next month? How do I tell people at the Christmas party I'm not drinking? Yeah. What do I do when my friend's birthday comes around? Am I go out to my buddy's cabin? How am I going to get by? And it seems like you can't survive in a sober world.
So what do you think was your absolute lowest point?
I didn't have, I don't think, a crushing rock bottom moment like most people. What had happened is I went 8 months sober when I was, I think, 29, 30.
Yep.
So I had 8 months of sobriety because I'd had a real rough crash kind of thing and got in some trouble at work by not showing up type of thing because I was drinking and drank through, unaccountable. And so I had these 8 months of sobriety and the first month was tough, but then after a few months, things got good. And so at 8 months in, I went on a golf trip with some friends.
Yep.
And in my mind, I was like, I'm going to drink on this golf trip.
Right. Yeah.
It's out of town. We're going for a couple of days, like a stag kind of thing, bachelor party. And I thought, I'm going to drink. I'm going to leave it out of town. I'm going to come back home. It's going to be business as usual.
Yep.
Went out of town, drank, followed me home, drank for 4 days straight or 3 days straight, missed work again.
Yeah.
Unaccounted for. And then I didn't get the help I needed. And the drinking continued for about 3 weeks. Until I finally did like a 4-day binge where I was just drinking around the clock, morning, night, staying in a hotel, again, missing work, not even phoning in. And I remember waking up at the end of that binge in my bed, and I missed that 8 months of sobriety. I missed the calm and the peace and the tranquility as I laid there thinking, like, my world's over. I'm in trouble. Why have I done this? Like, why am I in this situation again?
Yeah.
And that for me was the real moment when I was like, I have to do this for myself.
Yep.
And not because an employer wants me to, not because a partner is pressuring me. I need to do it for myself because I can't live like this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what did it for me.
So when you came out of it, how long do you think it took? Because we live in a time where people think, oh, I'm going to do this and it's done straight away. So how long would you say was your recovery? I mean, I guess you're still recovering because even though you haven't drunk for 9.5 years, people still say, oh, but you were an alcoholic. Yeah, you were, but now you're not. But so you recovered through it. How long would you say your actual recovery was?
Well, I definitely was in AA for the first couple of years. I haven't honestly been in probably 5 or 6 years. And to your listeners, please don't take that as a sign to quit your recovery program. What works for people, everyone is different. And I found my footing in other ways. But I was doing the recovery program very intently for a year right away because one, the employer required it for me to keep, I had to kind of have a battle plan. Right. And I'm glad. I needed that level of accountability. Despite wanting to do it for myself, I needed the added accountability.
Yeah.
And I was going to meetings probably 3 to 4 days a week and doing another side little counseling thing as well that lasted for maybe a month.
Yep.
But I would say, I always think that first year, it really is a strong measure because in that year, you've experienced Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, a birthday. You've experienced every event that you used to justify drinking through. And for me, that 1 year was a definite milestone. And I don't mean that as in, a year's gone by, I'm cured.
Yeah.
But it really was a sign to me of like, hey, you actually can do this.
Yeah. Well, I think you've just explained that as well, where you said, you went on a bachelor weekend to play golf and you thought, oh, look, I'll just drink this weekend. And how you explained it shows how easy it is to get back into that cycle without even really thinking you're getting into another cycle, because you went out, you had a few drinks with your mates, then came home, carried on drinking. And it wasn't as easy as you thought it was before you went away, was it?
No, not at all. And it accelerated very quickly in those 3 weeks that I did drink too. And I remember, you go to meetings and, you hear other people sharing and certain times you hardly listen. And other times things really resonate with you. And I remember somebody saying, if you stop drinking, when you start again, you start where you left off.
Yeah.
And I don't know how true that is, but boy, it felt that way for me. And now I'd be terrified to start again and pick up where I left off.
Yeah. Look, I mean, when I was in my 20s, I did drink a lot. We went out to clubs, we went out to bars, we all drank. And I think when I was about 28, 29, I actually had 2 people in my life which were alcoholics. And I would see them falling down drunk, not being able to string a sentence together. And one day I just went, I don't need to drink anymore. And so I will rarely have a glass of wine or something. We had a celebration for the business I run with a friend of mine. And I think it was when we got audited to say that, yes, we were registered to work, we registered the business. And we went out and we had a glass of wine. I think she had champagne. And we both got halfway through it and went, I don't really like this. And it's just, I think because I'd been away from alcohol for so long, I just don't even appreciate what, I guess, wine connoisseurs would go, oh, this is great. To me, it just seems like pointlessness. But as I guess maybe I was an alcoholic in my younger days because any night we went out partying, we would drink shots and everything. But then there came a time where I just went, and it was probably seeing these 2 people who just couldn't cope with their life. And it might have been similar to yours, where they weren't turning up for work. They weren't turning up when they had to go out for a dinner party or something like that. And I just went, you know what? I don't need to drink,
Yeah, absolutely. And it impacted me beyond just that. Going to work, you say a dinner party. I mean, my parents would invite me over for dinner. And I'll be there. And then, I would start drinking 3 hours before, and then I'd be too embarrassed to show up.
Yeah.
And ashamed, and I just was unaccountable to so many people in my life. I just hate it. Like, it was the worst feeling because you had the guilt, the shame, the feeling of failure on top of the battle of addiction that you're dealing with as well.
Because I guess it's also like you're really loving the drinking at the time because you're addicted to it. But as you say, you've got all those feelings in your head of guilt and shame because of things you're missing out on, not turning up for, not making calls for. So it's a real battle in your head, isn't it? About, well, I really want to drink, but I feel all these things as well.
It's an absolute, devil and angel on each shoulder, kind of, one telling you no and the other, and not just so often the devil had the louder voice.
Yeah.
And, I can remember sitting outside of like a beer vendor in my car, looking at like for 45 minutes, tempted to go in and buy some beer. And when I was in a kind of a middle recovery stage, tempted to go in and then no. And I remember once driving away and feeling like the weight of the world slipping off my shoulders when I didn't go in to buy. But that's the type of mental, arguments that you were just sort of constantly enduring.
Well, talking to people who have been addicted to drugs, they've said that it's like you're waiting outside for someone to turn up to buy from, and you're almost you're in I guess, a euphoric state because you're so excited about it. But then with the devil and the angel on the other side, you're thinking, I can't do this. I can't do it. I shouldn't do it. Why am I doing it? You know, they've been sober or off drugs for so long, but they said that feeling really takes over. And then when you, as you said, the weight of the world comes off you as you drive off. They said for the first hour or 2 hours afterwards, when you drive away, it's like, well, why didn't I get it? I'm stupid. I wanted it. Why? You know, and there's all these questions, but they say after that 1 or 2 hours, they feel like, I'm glad I didn't go back, you know, but it's almost like they get themselves into a heightened state of, oh, I'm going to do this. And then they say, no, I'm not going to. And then it's dealing with that sort of, I guess, a bit of regret, but then going into the, wow, I did it again. I walked away. I didn't do that.
Yeah, for sure. Until 3 hours later, and then they're back waiting again. Like it's, you know, it's this victory defeat kind of lifestyle. And it just got tough because it just took up so much of your mental resources and emotional resources living that way, where it always revolved around it.
But look, you came through it.
And here I am today. Couldn't be happier. Yeah.
And now I guess, look, you might still have negative thoughts about things, but I guess your feelings aren't the same as what they were when you were trying to hide everything you were doing, because now you're your authentic self.
Absolutely. As a personality is totally different. And it's not like when I drank, I was never a bad person. I was just stuck dealing with this addiction. But now I'm honest. I don't lie. I feel bad if I lie. Yeah. Whereas when I drank, I lied all the time. And it wasn't because I took pleasure in being mischievous. Yeah, dishonest. It was simply out of shame for admitting what I was doing and going through. I didn't want to share. I didn't want to tell people. Yeah. And back then, there was no Instagram pages. There was no Facebook communities. There were your resources were so much more limited to, the in-person meetings or a counselor. But you just didn't have these. You jump on Instagram now and I'm connected with thousands of people that can relate and are going through the same thing. And no one I know has to know that. Now I'm at a point where I don't care. I'm happy to share, but especially when you're first struggling out, you don't want anyone to know what a phenomenal tool these online resources are.
Oh, it's brilliant, isn't it? Because you can, most of the time you can Google, as long as you're not using it as Dr. Google, but you can Google things that can help you. And, it might just be a small thing that you find on the internet, but it changes the way you think. And it's changing your mindset, isn't it?
Big time. It just gives you a different perspective, ways of thinking of things, you just never maybe considered. And that's what I found the value in the group meetings, because I would hear so many people share. And a lot of the stuff just in one ear out the other, but then you'd hear a couple real strong points that people would share that just hit home. And another huge one was people would say to me periodically, a 50, 60-year-old would say, boy, I wish I had to quit when I was your age.
Yeah.
And that's a comment I took to heart all the time. And that's part of what motivated this young alcoholic is, I'm telling people, boy, if you think you got a problem or an issue, great, you're normal. That's okay. Yeah. Do something about it now. Don't wait till you're 50.
Yeah.
Act on it, because you're just going to waste another 10 or 20 years of your life fighting it.
Yeah, definitely. So now that you're in a better place, what are the positives that have come out of stopping drinking?
Well, so I stopped when I was 28. I had a really bad back injury. I was still drinking then. And when I was 30, I enrolled in college.
Yep.
And my first year of college, I was drinking and I really struggled. But since quitting drinking, I completed college, got my civil engineering technologist diploma, graduated. I got myself into a good career now that I'm very proud of.
Yeah.
I bought a house. I started traveling sober multiple times, Asia in the last couple of years, a few times, Europe, Hawaii, I'm all over. I've been playing in bands again. Musically connecting a lot better. I mean, I remember showing up and at some band practices in the past, just could hardly even pick up the guitar, didn't even know which one was mine, and now, showing up early, ready to go, prepared. The bonds with my family, I was always close with my family, but now we're, extremely close.
Yeah.
We're talking every day. We're doing a lot together. It's just strengthened those relationships.
Yep.
And I find mentally, I'm just a better person. I find that I deal with things better. Whenever I'm in kind of a stressful situation of that, I just think, well, at least you're not drunk. And, no matter what I'm dealing with, I can think, yeah, like that's the worst it gets, is dealing with addiction and missing work, like all of that chaos.
Yeah.
If you can endure that, the rest of life just doesn't seem too bad. And there's definitely been some low points, relationships ending, you're dating a girl and it doesn't pan out, and there's, a little bit of heartache and that kind of stuff. But even that, I'd rather go through that anguish sober than dealing with that drinking ever again. And just finding different ways to emotionally release or deal with those emotions instead of just drinking it away.
Yeah.
You ride through it.
Because when you come through the alcoholic haze, you've still got that problem to face. It's not like because you drank, it just went away completely. It just put it on hold until you were ready to deal with it.
Exactly. Alcohol has never solved anything. The problem's there. Yeah. Whether it's tomorrow or in 4 days. So,
yeah.
Just that type of stuff, like learning how to deal with things, being accountable, for me, that's such a huge one now. And accountability, honesty, I'm very empathetic. Addiction's taught me to be very empathetic now, because you never know what other people are going through. It's easy to judge somebody with a quick look, or, they come into work and they're moody or having a bad day, and that, well, how do you know they're not dealing with a spouse that's going through addiction, dealing with gambling problems, maybe they're in a financial crisis. You don't know what other people are experiencing. I used to try and hide it, and people didn't know what battles I was dealing with. It's taught me to be very empathetic towards other people.
And that's great. That's really good, because, we never know what other people are dealing with. And most people, unless you're really good friends with them, and I guess even then, don't actually tell you the whole truth of what's happening in their life because of being ashamed or embarrassed. And so if you can treat everyone with compassion and empathy, then they've got somewhere to fall if they need to turn and say, hey, Derek, I'm having this problem. Can you give me a hand with it? Or can you give me some advice? Or where could I go? Because now you're open to that and you're ready. You've been through it, so you can assist other people.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's paid off. Like, I've just, at first you're so shy of even opening up and telling your parents or your partner, your brother and sister, whoever, like, hey, here's the truth. I'm struggling with alcohol. It's so hard to admit. And I always have to take myself back to when I did it, because now here we are chatting about it like it's just, we're talking about the weather, but it was so hard to discuss back then. And I was so nervous to each person I opened up to. And I remember like testing it out. I remember clear as day the first time I told, my first handful of people. And now that I'm open about it, I do have people, asking me questions, approaching me, saying, hey, listen, I got a brother who's struggling. Do you think he's got a problem? Yeah. I have people looking for help, looking for advice. And that's one of the great things now I find about being open and honest. And I don't mean this arrogantly, but I'm past worrying about what people think of me.
Yeah.
If you want to judge me for it, if you want to judge me for it, good for you. Like, have at it.
Yeah.
But it's not going to rock my world.
But don't you think that those people who judge you might be hiding their own issue that they don't want to face, because you're now open and honest about it? And that's great, because I think that's why I wanted you on the podcast, because I think if you help one person who is drinking a lot, who then hears this and says, well, actually, that guy did it and he's been sober 9.5 years, maybe I can do that too. And the things you said about, oh, well, I went out and I went on that bachelor weekend and I thought I could do it. They'll be thinking, well, yeah, I've been sober now a year and I was going to go to that party and have a few drinks, but maybe that's not a good idea. So just talking it through on here actually assists people who are listening to put their mind in order of, well, no, that might not be a good idea. Hey, he said this is a really good idea and his emotions got a lot better. He's more empathetic. I want to be more like that, So it spirals in a good way to someone listening to you talking about it. And it's good that you can be open and honest about it now, because it helps other people.
Yeah, and that's glad. I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's sort of why I do it. Is I guess I like to think that I'm trying to be a voice for people that haven't found their voice yet.
Definitely.
And when I say that, that's for people that are still doubting, that are still struggling, that are denying, that are in that real tough position in life where, I hope that by me sharing, and it's not to be, hey, look at me, like in a braggy way. I mean it like, look at what I've done, look what I can achieve, because you kick alcohol out of the way and all of a sudden it's just clear skies ahead. And I mean, that's not going to mean there isn't going to be rough patches in life, but you're far better equipped to deal with it when you don't have alcoholism weighing you down.
Definitely. Look, I mean, you've spoken really well about the whole situation you've been through and how other people can see that there is a light and there is a change and there is a positive side to coming through the other side. Where do you think you'll be in 5 years?
Boy, in 5 years, I don't see my life changing too dramatically. I'm very happy professionally. I'm, maybe, a family potentially down the road would be a welcome addition. But, I hope I'm still doing the alcoholic. It's, I got to admit, tough. I'm not I grew up without social media really being a thing. So I have to sometimes force myself to engage in it, not for a lack of enjoyment, but because it's just not something I'm familiar with my whole life. So it's always a bit of a stretch with me to run in the webpage and write in blogs and that, because I have so many other interests in life, and I hope to keep being musically active in that. I perform still recreationally. And just kind of living a good, happy life, traveling once we're able to again, and being positive, and hopefully still connecting with people and helping people that are still finding their footing with addiction.
Well, look, I'm sure you'll get the handle on social media because I'm 10 years older than you, and I picked it up and ran with it, and now it's my new addiction.
Yeah, that's the trouble. I like to keep it a healthy interest.
Yeah. Well, my last question was going to be, what is something that you do to keep yourself positive? But I don't think I need to ask you that, because we've heard through the conversation about how positive you are and how you've changed your life around and the reasons you did and how much better you feel. So I don't think I need to ask you that. Is there anything you'd like to say?
I just always think gratitude. I'm always so grateful for what I have, where I am. I try to just appreciate kind of the moment where I'm at now, and not kind of worry about what I don't have, but be thankful for what I do have. And if I'm feeling kind of, I wish I had, I just think back to where I was 10 years ago, 9.5 years ago.
Yeah.
I would never then have envisioned being at this place in life that I'm at now. I couldn't have thought it was possible.
Yeah.
It just seemed hopeless. So, I always kind of remember back to that guy that was scared and struggling and just felt like life was hopeless. And I really think gratitude is key in maintaining, a positive outlook. Well,
look, I think you've given everybody a positive outlook on what can come if you make the change from being a drinker, maybe even drugs, is that you can lead a good life. You can go back to school. You can learn something new. You can create new things. That's one of the things I think with people that do have an addiction like alcohol or drugs, they find it really hard to be creative and to think through what they could become because they're so involved in what is happening to them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's ironic, you say that. I remember I used to go sit at bars by myself, and I'd sit there, trying to be somebody I wasn't, trying to act like I was some, wishing I was a business professional, or, living a good, happy life, trying to project confidence in that. Meanwhile, it was the opposite, and now I can safely say that, I am living this stuff because, I made some good decisions by, getting the help I needed.
Yeah, it's great. Well, thank you, Derek. It was really good talking to you, really positive. I hope that people get something from it, and I'm sure we'll talk again sometime down the track. Yeah, well, thanks again for having me on. I really appreciate your time, and it was a really pleasure meeting you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Well, that was another episode of Life Changes You. If you want to contact us, we're available on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And we also have a website, lifechangesyou.com.au. So until next time, take care of each other and thanks for listening.